When an aeroplane fails, we always blame the engineering, but the real failure happened long before the plane ever left the ground. What happened at Boeing isn't just an aviation story, it's a warning about how politics, pressure, and culture can quietly break quality in any organisation. Over the last few years, Boeing has become somewhat of a case study, and no, not in innovation, but in something far more uncomfortable. High-profile failures, repeated quality concerns, internal misalignment, public investigations, and one of the biggest trust collapses in modern corporate history. But here's what many people overlook. These weren't simply just engineering errors. Instead, they were cultural and political failures playing out inside a global institution that once set the gold standard for safety. Because when a company with Boeing's legacy starts stumbling, again and again, it's not the machines that failed, it's the environment the machines were built in. Within an organisation, quality doesn't fail in the product first, it failed in the culture that produced it, and often in the political dynamics leadership chose not to confront. Let's start with the first major lesson. When pressures override principles, quality then becomes a negotiable. Investigations revealed a common theme, which was relentless performance pressure. Pressure on timelines, pressure on production metrics, pressure to complete, pressure to satisfy commercial expectations, and pressure to just get it done. This type of pressure isn't unique to Boeing, it exists in every industry. However, if you operate in the aviation industry at the level which Boeing does, this pressure becomes a whole lot worse, and the repercussions are enormous. When speed becomes more important than the standards, something subtle but dangerous happens. Professionals start cutting corners. Exceptions become routine. Voicing concerns becomes inconvenient. Leaders celebrate output and overlook erosion. And regardless of what level of company you operate in, teams begin to gradually learn that survival matters more than vigour. This is where politics begins, because pressure alone doesn't break quality. Pressure combined with the leaders who look the other way does. That's not an engineering failure. That's cultural drift reinforced by political incentives. This becoming more evident in a struggling aviation industry. The second lesson is even more universal. It's when people don't feel safe to speak up, problems don't disappear, they go silent. Internal reports showed warning signs, miscommunications, and concerns that never reached the top. Not because the information didn't exist, but because the culture made it unsafe to deliver. In organisations where politics rule, you'll hear phrases like, "Don't slow us down, don't escalate this yet, we'll fix it later, bringing up problems makes you difficult, be a team player." This is how true political cultures operate. The truth becomes filtered, softened, delayed, and suppressed. And here's the uncomfortable reality. Silence is not a sign of stability, instead it's a sign of fear. Once people stop telling the truth, leadership is no longer leading, they're negating a carefully curated illusion. Protecting KPIs that keeps their ass out of the fire. But that's when quality is already failing. You just haven't seen the evidence or the data yet. Internally, that's most likely what happened at Boeing. The third lesson again cuts across every industry, and probably the most common. And it's when quality becomes a department instead of a value, and it makes failure become inevitable. Boeing had quality engineers, they had procedures, they had checklists, audits and reviews. But those things only work when the culture supports them. When broader political forces inside the organisation treat quality as a cost, a delay, an obstacle, and a compliance checkbox, then quality doesn't collapse in dramatic explosions. Instead, it erodes slowly like rust. One small compromise here, one pressured decision there, one ignored concern here, and it only takes one issue to cascade into something enormous, especially when you're operating as Boeing do. And here's the truth, if quality only lives inside a department, it'll eventually die everywhere else. Instead, quality needs to be a shared value, something the culture protects, and not something the politics get to negotiate. Especially when you're dealing with customer safety. Now let's talk about the factor that quality shaped everything behind the scenes. It's when cost cutting becomes a strategy instead of a tool. This is when quality starts losing every argument. Yes, cost reduction is normal, especially in this economic climate, where COVID had a massive effect on the aviation industry. And also, efficiency is healthy. But Boeing became a case study in what happens when financial targets overshadow operational reality, because cost cutting can become a dangerous illusion. It looks efficient in spreadsheets, but often extracts its price from the product. Cost cutting erodes product quality. When corners get trimmed, teams get stretched thinner, supplier oversight weakens, redundancies vanish, engineering vigor becomes too expensive, and the organisation begins trading long-term safety for short-term savings. The cultural message becomes unmistakable. It's do more with less, even if less means less quality. And once cost discipline evolves into cost obsession, quality isn't just compromise, it becomes systematically undervalued. And maybe the most important hidden force behind Boeing's decline is one that rarely makes headlines. It's when talent leaves and it's not replaced, the competency then drops. As tech and AI develops, less engineers are looking to get into the aviation industry. This leaves a gaping hole in the skill set available on the market. Without skill set and competency, the culture becomes unchallenged. Over time, Boeing saw a dilution of the deep engineering expertise that once defined the company, and the consequence was massive. When engineers left, institutional knowledge went with them, and overall competency dropped, so fewer people could spot emerging risks. And finally, when the capability eroded, so did the confidence to speak up, and the remaining culture became shaped by those who don't question decisions because they couldn't challenge them. This wasn't always a behavioural choice, sometimes just an intellectual one. This created the silent feedback loop. Reduced talent, reduced technical challenge, reduced questioning, reduced accountability. When teams no longer have the expertise or authority to push back, political driven priorities win by default. A culture loses its guardians, quality loses its defenders, and decline accelerates. And any organisation that loses its talent eventually loses its truth tellers. This isn't just about Boeing. You don't need to build aeroplanes to face this type of risk. Deadlines, growth goals, customer pressure, leadership turnover, competing priorities, internal politics, resource constraints. This is all normal business. And quality rarely collapses in dramatic moments. Instead, as we know, it erodes over small compound moments over time. A combination of factors which usually weaken quality quietly until something external finally exposes what internal behaviour has been hiding. Without getting into too many specifics with Boeing, we know exactly what their issues were. So here's the real lesson Boeing taught us, is that culture is what protects quality, and it's politics what corrodes it. If you want world-class outcomes, you need more than processes, policies and checklists. You need an environment where the truth travels fast, concerns are welcomed, pressure never overrides principles, quality is everyone's responsibility, and politics never outranks safety or integrity. If you care about quality, don't start with your production lines or code reviews. Start with your culture, start with your incentives, and start with what your organisation really rewards. That's where quality lives or dies. If this video made you rethink how quality works inside your own organisation, hit like and subscribe. My name is Liam Adcock, and thank you so much for watching.